Good morning, everyone. I hope this Monday finds you well and living your very best life in Jesus Christ. Our little 5-year-old neighbor Landry has become quite the problem solver these days. In games, he often can think several moves in advance and figure out sequences to solve rather complex puzzles. For example, that he must climb the ledge, tie the rope on the rock, then lower himself down to get the key, then retie the rope on the tree and swing across the top of the wall to reach the gate and get the treasure. He's good at it. He's also become quite adept also at explaining what Pop or Mom or Dad or Nana has to do to fix something, or telling us how to perform a simple task. However, as good as he is getting at solving problems and little puzzles in sequence, he's still too young to grasp a lot of times the overall goal. As a matter of fact, at his stage of development, he often has no clue as to what the final solution will look like, only the little pieces that he's solving right now. If it's too big or too difficult a problem, he's liable to have a fit of anger and frustration until Pop solves the problem for him. This is perfectly normal at his age, and I confess to being the same way. I want to know everything, and frankly, I want to be controlling everything. I can't help but notice this is, in many ways, the way we often look at the world. We live in a crazy, chaotic world. We all know that. And we're all so busy dealing with solving our little problems, so consumed with our narrow point of view that we forget that we need to trust God to see the big picture. Of late, I've been counseling a few people, and they all seem to be asking some variation of this question. What in the world is God doing? Well, perhaps you've heard that question asked a few times, and maybe even you yourself are wondering if God really cared about us. Wouldn't he stop this pandemic? Wouldn't he bring an end to all the inequality? Wouldn't he stop all this violence? It can certainly be difficult at times to understand what God is doing. The Bible often reminds us that God's thoughts and ways are so much higher than our own, we're just not capable of understanding the way he thinks. Romans 11:33 and 34 reminds us, "Oh, the depth of the riches of the wisdom and knowledge of God! How unsearchable his judgments and his paths beyond tracing! Who has known the mind of the Lord? Or who has been his counselor?" See, we don't always see the big picture of things, and that's because we're not yet made to do so. And this can lead to frustration and anger when we don't understand why God allows certain things to happen. And I'll be honest with you, this in turn often leads many to blame God, or even worse, turn away from God. That verse says, "Who has known the mind of the Lord?" Well, God may be tough to figure out at times, but just because we don't understand his plan doesn't mean that we can assume he does not love us or that we can't trust him. Actually, quite the opposite. When God sent Jesus into this world to die on the cross and pay for our sins, nobody understood that either. Even Jesus' closest followers and friends tried to stop it, or at best to talk Jesus out of it. And yet, even though they could not understand what God was planning, it ended up being a huge blessing for them and frankly for you and me and the whole world. In sending Jesus to die on the cross, God made sure that there was a way for us all to be saved. Through faith in Jesus, we're forgiven and assured of an eternity with him. In that same way that Landry is often mystified at how Pop or Nana can solve problems he can't even begin to understand, we cannot always understand God's plan or know the mind of the Lord. But as we see God's plan for saving us through Jesus, we can be assured of his love for us and his intent to bless us. And that means that he loves us and we can trust him. As events around us seem to spiral out of control, we need to trust that God has a plan. He loves us and has saved us and will continue to carry out his will with you and me in mind. Yeah, I know. Sometimes that's difficult. I just might, like my little 5-year-old buddy, want to know everything, understand everything, and let's face it, control everything. And when I don't, or when we don't, we sometimes get frustrated and angry. But in the same manner that Landry must trust in Pop to take care of the big stuff and see the big picture, I must also trust in the Lord to do the same for me. and I hope and urge you to do the same. I want you to have a terrific day. I want you to also know that I'm here if you need me, and I love you all.